I was out camping with some friends just a couple of months ago, and I had an extremely bizarre and somewhat terrifying encounter that I cannot explain. We decided to go and camp near Bullfrog Marina, Lake Powell, Utah, and since the primitive campground was closed due to COVID, we decided to find a camp spot on a nearby road. We spent the first night in an hallucinogenic-fueled state, with the full moon shining above us. It was truly an amazing spiritual experience. The next day, we went down to the beach at Bullfrog Marina and spent the day in the sun, and when we got back to the camp, most of my friends decided to take a nap. My brother and I knew that if we took a nap, that we may as well call it a night. So, we chose to go explore the gully and the dry riverbed below our camp. It was beautiful, a very beautiful area. We actually found a bullfrog hopping around and what we determined to be lemur footprints. It was after dusk at this point and was starting to get pretty dark. I told my brother that I wanted to check out this little canyon near the riverbed before we went back to camp. He agreed, so we made our way into the canyon. It was actually pretty dark in the canyon, and I only had a small flashlight with me. I was walking in front, and my brother behind me. I figured that it was a fairly small canyon, and I assumed that the rock wall that I was looking at near the back of the canyon was the end. But as I thought we were nearing the end, I noticed that the canyon actually curved back more to the right. As I saw that it went back further than I speculated, I remembered that it is not uncommon for there to be bobcats and cougars in this area. I started feeling a little uneasy at the thought of it being a potential den for a predator, when a breeze blew into the canyon and a bush near me moved as a result of the wind. "Oh shit," I said, and my brother responded with, "What?" Seeing that I was startled. "Oh, it was just a bush," I replied, as I made my way around the bush and peered in the back of the canyon. I saw something walking toward me at a fairly fast pace. "Oh my, go!" I hollered at my brother, and we ran back up the embankment in the canyon to higher ground. What did you see?" he asked me, as I was shining my light down near the bush that I was near earlier. "I saw something darting toward me." "That was terrifying," I replied. "What did it look like?" he asked. "It looked humanoid, bony, and standing on two legs," I said. He felt uneasy too at this point. "I couldn't see too well. It is so dark in here. Maybe it was my imagine..." Right as I said that, my light shined down on two eyes behind the bush, swaying as if it was trying to get a better look at us through the bush. "We need to go," I yelled, and we took off out of the canyon. We made it back to the riverbed and paused for a moment. I looked back to see if whatever I saw was following us. We saw nothing at this point, and we kept moving back toward our camp. Part of me wanted to go back for a better look, because I've always wanted to experience something supernatural, if that is what this was. But the other part of me wanted to get out of there. Eventually, we made it back to the camp, and our friends were still sleeping. We ate a little food, and once we winded down a little bit, we decided it was best to go to bed. When we woke up the next day, as we're getting ready to head home, I told my friends what had happened, and they were freaked out hearing my story. One of my friends told me that he woke up to the sounds of somebody walking around his tent in the middle of the night. He said he thought it was one of us, but hearing that made him think it could have been someone or something else. I still do not know what I saw that night, but the thought of it still frightens me to this day. Most of my family lives out on the reservation, but I moved states away many years ago to get out of that hellhole. I've since started a new job and a new life in other places. I much prefer the greenery of southern Oregon than I do the deserts of New Mexico and Arizona. I still make trips back to see my family every so often, and unfortunately, as much as I don't want to believe it to be true, we do have our encounters with dark spirits. Just this last time I was there, my brother believes he was followed home by what he believes what you would call a skinwalker. We have a name for them, and our culture does, but I'm not going to mention it because I don't want to bring attention to it. He was coming back from a friend's house, and he said he made eye contact with this strange-looking person covered in animal skins walking alongside the road in the middle of the night. It wasn't pitch black yet, but it was dusk, bright enough to where he could still see the person's face. He drove by, and they made complete eye contact, and he told me he felt like this person attached itself to him. I blew him off and didn't really know what he meant. I thought he was just huffing and puffing. He said he could feel this person's energy attached to him and his vehicle, and then the person started sprinting after his truck. He only drove faster, but then when he looked back up in his rearview mirror, the person was gone. He kept driving, but then only a few minutes later, noticed this abnormally large coyote running alongside his truck about 100 feet or so out in the desert, staying parallel with him. It looked very mangy and had very unnatural sunken-in eyes. He just got bad feelings from this thing and decided to lead it astray instead of leading it directly back to the house. He pulled through some different areas and neighborhoods and took a very long way home. He lost track of it at some point, but he's still sure that it's watching him somewhere. Sometimes he used to always think the whole skinwalker jargon was just a bunch of crap, but the more time I spent with my family out here, the more I realized there is a lot more truth to it than I would like to accept. You can be even trying your best to stay out of it, but that still doesn't guarantee you safety. Luckily, we have medicine men in our family who can pray and protect over us, but these things still, I feel like they have too much power. I don't feel like medicine men is enough to protect us. This is one of the reasons that I feel so much safer having moved to Oregon and far away. I know Southern Oregon isn't exactly a safe zone per se, but much better than being at ground zero, where these things thrive and feed off the torment of the weak. I know for a fact that skinwalkers are real, or if they are not skinwalkers, they are something. A month ago, in June, I was driving through the reservation with a friend of mine when we stopped to pull over to go pee outside. I decided to have a quick cigarette real quick, while my friend had to drain the pipes. We felt a weird energy as soon as we got out of the car. There were no other cars around in the visible vicinity. Out here, you can see other cars coming for a long ways away, just because of how flat it is. We did, however, have a wonderful view of the mesas and the red desert that spanned forever. We're not from around the Navajo reservation, but we've had many friends from the area, so we're familiar with the terrain. As I was saying, the energy, it felt very off. My friend's pissing in the one sage bush, and I'm puffing away on my cigarette, when off in the desert, we see this tall, skinny black figure with what looks to be a skull-type head stand up from behind a large bush and begin walking towards us slowly. I start saying to my friend, "Do you see what I'm seeing?" And I kid you not, midstream, he starts freaking out and pointing, saying, "What is that thing? Why is it coming towards us? We need to get out of here." The best I can describe to you is the body reminded me something like Slender Man or something. Very tall, very lanky, but obviously not 13 feet tall or anything creepypasta or unrealistic looking. Probably more 7 to 8 feet tall, if I had to guess. Not too much taller than I. It reminded me whatever it was in was long tattered black robes or something. They were very dirty. Again, it was very slender. The head looked to be that of a goat skull or something weird. It was a skull though, I can tell you that. And from the distance it was away from us, it was as clear as day that it was a skull that had some sort of horns on it, like possibly a goat skull, and it was walking on 2 legs toward us, very slowly, never breaking stride or eye contact. Although, even the way it moved seemed incredibly weird. It didn't bob up and down like a person normally does when they take a stride. It kind of glided. Even though there were points where there should have been visible legs, it was just a long, black tattered robe from what I can tell, and it stayed unmoving. But again, it was very slow and steadily moving towards us. Who knows why or what it was? Since my friend and I are familiar with the area, we've had friends who are native to these parts and have their own stories to tell. Stories that I've always written off, but I've had some stories from friends that were terrifying in a way. Part of the reason I've always wanted to avoid coming to the reservation, even though in my own mind I wanted to deny it as much as I possibly could. I guess the question I should be asking is, were we targeted for a reason? Could it have just been a mere coincidence that we were at the wrong place at the wrong time? My friend and I jumped back into the car and got out of there. I don't recall ever being so afraid in my life, and I'm not one to buy into the whole creepypasta BS. I would like to think that it was somebody in a costume trying to spook us, but who would be out there in the middle of the desert on a 110-degree day in full costume? It doesn't make any sense. We were only out there for maybe 2 minutes, if even that, before we saw this thing. We were laughing and joking, making noise, but I didn't think we were that loud. But I'm guessing that maybe this thing had heard us.